Game Night Montreal here on TSN 690. Matthew Ross subbing in for Eric Thomas. 9:04 on the program. We're here until 11 o'clock tonight, monitoring all the action. Great little moment in the Federer versus Matasevich match right now on center court, first round at the U.S. Open, as Federer's going to win this match. We all know that. He's up 2-0, 4-4 in the third. Michael Jordan is in the stands in like the second or third row behind Matasevich, who I believe is a qualifier. And he just pointed up at Michael Jordan, and the whole crowd kind of gave him a standing ovation, and Jordan's a little embarrassed. So kind of a fun little moment there. Right now, we're talking some baseball here on the program with our next guest. He is a longtime columnist with the Toronto Star. You can follow him on twitter.com/rgriffinstar. It is Rich Griffin. Hey, Rich, how you doing? And not. All right. Rich apparently had another more pressing call to take, so we'll try and get Rich Griffin on momentarily to talk about the Blue Jays, who, by the way, have now tied it at the Rogers Center while we were away there. 3-3 the score, and Blue Jays trying to stay over 500 and hang around. 66-65 right now. I mean, this is as low as it gets for a team that was in first place earlier in the year, and sky seemed to be the limit, but we all know based on that pitching that it wasn't going to last unless they went out and they got somebody to help them in that rotation, and it just didn't happen. You can kind of encapsulate the pitching season for the Blue Jays with naming one guy, Drew Hutchison. He was good early on, kind of faded, exactly how the Blue Jays have done as well. 9:06 here on Game Night Montreal. R.A. Dickey, by the way, on the mound today for the Blue Jays. And early on, not so good. Lately, though, the last couple of innings, he's really cracked down. Red Sox scored 3 in the first inning and none from innings 2 through 5. So Dickey starting to come around here. The Red Sox have 5 hits in total on the game. Again, 3-3 right now at the Rogers Center, top of the 6th inning. We're ready now to chat with Rich Griffin of the Toronto Star. R. Griffin on Star, by the way, on Twitter as well. Hi, Rich. How you doing?
Good, Matthew. How are you?
Very well, thanks. Thanks for taking the time this evening. I was checking out the latest on the coverage of the Toronto Blue Jays, and it's becoming more and more doom and gloom to the point where Adam Lynn responded to a reporter today by saying it's starting to feel like it usually does around here in Toronto, i.e., not exciting and not in contention. What is the mood like now for Blue Jay fans?
Well, I think that the fact that they are still above 500, but at one time were 14 games over 500, makes it seem doom and gloom. But when you look at it, there's 15 other teams that are in worse position than the Jays. So what are their fans thinking? And I think that just so much was expected once they got to 38-24 on June the 6th. That you get all the percentages thrown at you that they're 89% to make the playoffs, and all of a sudden now they're 1.6%. And to me, I mean, that's so fluid, and it's a day-to-day sport that it's hard to pay attention to something like that. But if it's coming from within the clubhouse, if Adam Lind is saying that, and Jose Bautista is not sure of the commitment of ownership to winning, then it becomes a disturbing aspect of what the Blue Jays season has become.
Rich Griffin joining us here on Game Night Montreal. Rich, were you surprised? I know some were. Were you specifically surprised that the Jays didn't go out and get one more arm for that rotation if they thought that they were a contender?
Well, I was surprised, and the fact is that Alex Anthopoulos really believed that the guy that he was going to get was Irvin Santana in late March. That didn't happen, and the only reason he would have been able to do it is because of the cooperation of his players, where they were willing to defer contract money till further down the line in order to try and win this year. I think that was a turning point for the club and for ownership, because obviously if players had to participate in getting Irvin Santana, then there wasn't any money available. And to me, it's unacceptable that Rogers ownership that has that much money, and granted they spend a lot of money on NHL rights, but the Blue Jays are a moneymaker for them in terms of they have they sell the rights, the access at multiple levels of their empire. I think it was unacceptable that they did not go out and get somebody at the trade deadline, and so obviously did the players. Casey Janssen and Jose Bautista both reacted at the deadline to say exactly the same thing. So it was very surprising to me and very surprising to the players in the clubhouse.
Elsewhere on this team, Brett Lowry, obviously another lost season due to injury for him. At some point, I know he's Canadian and he's quite marketable and an energetic guy. At some point, does the team have to say, you know what, it would be great in an ideal world to have him, but we can't plan our future around him, whether he's at second or third or anywhere?
Well, are the Orioles saying that about Manny Machado?
That's fair.
I mean, he's been hurt twice drastically in pretty much the same situation where he's a young player trying to establish himself with tremendous talent, but seems to be injury prone. And both are young men. I mean, Brett Lawrie is 23, and I think what you have to do is you can't give up on him. And what you said earlier about, well, he's Canadian, so blah blah blah. I mean, Canadian has nothing to do with it. This guy can play baseball. But what they have to do is, instead of just bringing in some nondescript players to spring training as possible infielders, as AAA guys that may be called up every now and then, they have to go out and get somebody that can play the position, a veteran, but a young veteran who is like a fringe starting player at first and third. They have to get that player on the team from opening day on, so that if Brett Lawrie does go down, that they have somebody who can fill in instead of having to go out and get a Juan Francisco or a Munenori Kawasaki or someone, Steve Collison, somebody who is not a third baseman on a contending team.
Right. Elsewhere on this club and obviously the coverage, John Gibbons, is he a guy that you think will be back next year if the team finishes probably around 500, maybe a couple games over, that sort of range? Does he come back as manager?
Well, I think John Gibbons, Paul Beeston would admit right now that he made a mistake in allowing Alex Anthopoulos to hire John Gibbons in November of 2012. He would admit right now that it was a mistake because the team, the organization, ownership believed that the talent they had brought in the Marlins deal and the Mets deal and signing Melky Cabrera, they believed at that time that myself, Richard Griffin, could manage that team to the World Series. So instead of me, because I was busy, They hired John Gibbons, who already had an opportunity to do it. But the thing was, he was the anti-John Farrell. John Farrell was a guy that would not allow Alex Anthopoulos to come into the office after a tough loss, and that played against him. And so when he left for Boston, they wanted the opposite. It's always they hire the opposite of what they had. Every team does. And the opposite of John Farrell was John Gibbons, because Alex Anthopoulos could go in and lie down on his sofa and have a nap after a tough loss, and there's no problem. But that doesn't mean he's the right manager for a team that really was not as talented as they believed, or had some players that had some flaws, or had too many players that had never been to a World Series, like Jose Reyes and some of those other guys. So, is John Gibbons' job safe if they finish 81 to 83 games? I'm not sure that it is. I think it should not be.
Chatting with Rich Griffin of the Toronto Star, of course, also a former Montreal Expos employee. So we got to get your take on.
Oh, don't make me cry.
No.
Right?
We're not going to go all deep and such. But there is coming out in October, supposedly on a network television we're not sure where, but a 94 Expos documentary by a Toronto filmmaker named Sean Menard, who also is responsible for securing the shout-out by Pedro Martinez a few days ago to Expos fans wanting baseball to come back here. Wanted to get your thoughts on, of course, how special that 94 team was. Certainly you had a nice front row seat.
Yeah, I'm only going to watch it if Anakin Slade sings the theme song. That's all. But that 94 team, when I came back in late March for that exhibition series, and to me that was the greatest thing ever. I took my daughter to the games, 95,000, 96,000 people, and it was just so tremendous, and to see all of those former Expos, and it wasn't just a 94 team, but when I saw players that I hadn't seen in 20 years, and like it was a tremendous team. It was the team that was going to go to the World Series, whether they won the World Series or not. They were going to the World Series, and to talk to them now, they all believe it. They still believe it. Every player that was there, wherever they went the rest of their careers, the highlight was not just the 94 Expos, but being with the Expos. And to me, being a part of that, being the PR guy at the time, being in the clubhouse when Kevin Malone on August 11th, 94 said, stay near your phones, this isn't going to last very long, we're going to win the World Series. To me, that's like both tremendously energizing and tremendously depressing.
That's well put. You look at the trailer for that documentary coming out, and the filmmaker interviewing Moises Alou saying he won the World Series in '97 with the Marlins, and the '94 Expos were better. So it's tough, obviously, to swallow for Montreal baseball fans. He is Rich Griffin, our Griffin Star on Twitter.com, or check out his column in the Toronto Star. Rich, thanks so much for your time.
Okay, that's true. Anytime you want to talk Expos baseball, let's do it.
Oh, man, now I'm going to cry. Thanks so much, Rich.
All right, guys.